And I should have done this stream a while ago, but I came into technical difficulties, so it took a little while before I could actually start this stream with you. So please forgive me for starting so very late. In fact, my phone is charging, so I had to put my camera pod or my camera setup down on the floor. I'm actually on the floor instead of on the chair here where I usually am to be able to do this stream. But I really am delighted to share this time with you guys. First of all, if you want to donate to my channel, I Am Christ, I Am Disciple, you can do so via PayPal, which will be in the description, which is right below this video if you're watching it on YouTube. With respect to the topic, the Marvel Cinematic Universe dumbed down comic book movies and cinema, I promise you that it will be worth your time. I'm going to try not to be too lengthy today, okay? First, we start off always with scripture. Then we will go into some of the comic book movies out there that have come through history. Then we'll talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the pluses about it, because there's a lot of pluses to it, and the minuses to it as well. And then we will wrap it up by talking about how the Warner Brothers Pictures and Warner Brothers Discovery is trying to copy that, harness that, and they're actually trying to continue that. I'll also use examples to show you how people are not processing information properly anymore. And we are living in a very fast, rapid age where people want things that are easily digestible. They want to use their time to do other things. So they want something quick to the point. And as a result of that, they're not really critically thinking anymore. Critical thinking is kind of becoming less and less. People are less and less involved in civics, etc., etc., etc. So we'll go into all of that, and we'll also talk about, again, because I'm on a campaign, how Restore the Snyderverse can restore that. I can bring back cinema to cinema, and when I say cinema, I know what I mean, and we will use the definition Martin Scorsese uses for cinema, and you will understand what I mean. All right, so we begin with scripture. My scripture for today, it comes from the book of Luke. It comes from Luke chapter 24. All right, it's very short this time. Luke 24 verses 1 to about 3. But very early in the morning, Sunday morning, the women came to the tomb taking spices that they had prepared. They found that the stone covering the entrance of the tomb had been rolled aside. So they went in, but they couldn't find the body of Jesus. They were puzzled, trying to think what could have happened. Suddenly, two men appeared to them clothed in dazzling robes. They were very bright. The women were terrified and bowed low before them. And the men asked, "Why are you looking in a tomb for someone who is alive?" That's it. So, basically what I'm trying to tell you is, out there is like, in the movie realm, in the film realm, it's kind of like a tomb. Okay, it's like a tomb. It seems as though cinema is dying. It seems as though cinema is dead. But no, cinema is not dead. Okay, cinema is alive. And we'll talk about that now. So the first thing we're going to go into, like I said before, is we're going to talk about comic book movies before the MCU existed. I'm going to start off with a quote from Martin Scorsese. Okay, Martin Scorsese says, see if I can find it first. Gotta find it. Oh, here it is. Okay. Martin Scorsese says, "I think there'll always be the theatrical experience. Because people want to experience this thing together. That's cinema. Scorsese says, but at the same time, the theaters need to step up to make them places where people can go and will want to go to enjoy themselves or to go to see something that moves them. Now, there's many things I wanted to say, and there's many different places I need to go in this video, but I will really try to chisel it down. So what he's saying is cinema is a place where you can have fun. You can have popcorn movies, in other words, what we call blockbuster popcorn movies, where they're easy to digest, they're easy to understand, they're very on the surface. You have a nice little fun time, and you'll leave the cinema. All right? And he also talks about cinema where you go to it and you actually leave it feeling somehow kind of way, right? It has an emotional impact on you, and the impact is such that you feel a certain kind of way when you leave the cinema. And so Martin Scorsese talks about this. So let's go to the early comic book movies. I'll look at Marvel, I'll look at DC, okay? Okay, so here are some of the top comic book movies. They're not even Marvel or DC, they're just comic book movies. You have Alita, Battle Angel. This is not before. Hellboy was before the MCU. And Hellboy, as you know, it has, lighter aspects to it. It has, sci-fi to it. You also have Constantine, which came before the MCU. You had 300, which was a comic book movie that came before the MCU. You have RoboCop, which came before the MCU. You had V for Vendetta, which is a comic book movie that came before the MCU. You have Star Wars, which now becomes a comic book movie that came before the MCU. That was a franchise movie, though. And obviously formed a franchise. You had X-Men before the MCU came to be. All right. You had Blade. You had Darkman, Sin City, Dick Tracy, Conan the Barbarian, The Matrix, The Crow. You had Spider-Man. You had Terminator 2 and Terminator. You had The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. You had Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Comic book movies were cinematic, even though they had varied tones and textures. Take, for instance, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had a different kind of tone and texture state to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen felt like mystery and mystique and magic, and yet at the same time, it was this interesting collection of individuals, right? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was much more up-tempo, upbeat kind of movie. That early version of Ninja Turtles back in the 80s or early 90s was one which was kind of pop culture. It's kind of realistic because people are dying in it, but at the same time getting injured, but yet at the same time there were jokes. It was somewhat light, even though it was in the night most of the time, because the turtles had to avoid people so they didn't, people didn't know that there was these mutants out there because they were mutants. So, excuse me, I had to shift my body weight. So that cinema had various textures. Conan the Barbarian, to me, was one of those really before its time kind of comic book movies, in that it felt very, very lore-ish, not necessarily an epic, but still epically done. And it's one of those movies that to me stands the test of time, even though it's kind of ludicrous to watch it now. It's just so very, the word I'm looking for is graphic. It was edgy for its time. It pushed the boundaries on comic book movies. There are other comic book movies where the comic books came after the movies. But I'm putting out the selection of movies because all of these movies, what made them so interesting was they're so different. It was a catalog of entertainment. You had Blade, you had Highlander, you had Superman 1978, but you had Darkman, you had The Invisible Man. You had a number of really interesting comic book movies, all of them with different tones, textures, different beats, but they all were cinema because when you went in and saw the movie, when you came out of the movie, you felt different. Shout out to Kal-El. What's up, my brother? Peace and blessings to you. You're not recording on the system for some reason. You just smash the like button as well. All of these comic book movies had different feels, different textures, but the more important thing was when you left that comic book movie, you felt differently. It had an imprint on you. When I saw Dick Tracy, I can't remember everything about Dick Tracy. I do remember at the end, the villain of the movie, or the person who turned out to be the villain of the movie, was actually the attractive woman who was in the movie. She was the one doing all the killings. That was a lot of killing. I don't even know how that movie was PG. It was a gangster movie as well, and Dick Tracy was moving. But what really impressed me about that movie, and it wasn't just the tone, the texture, it wasn't a popcorn flick by no means. It was that the movie moved me because in the midst of all that violence, Dick Tracy formed a bond and relationship with the woman who was assisting him all the way through the movie. In fact, she got kidnapped closer to the end. And why I remember that is because it showed you that some people will be with you through thick and thin. And it left a mark on me because the movie was, I'm not going to lie, the movie was actually very violent for a children's movie. It was very colorful and stuff, but it's Tommy guns. They kind of glorified the 40s and 50s. The old kind of old-fashioned cars. Guys were wearing prosthetics to kind of make them look tougher than they really were, and they kind of look scary looking. But the thing that really got me, because it was a kind of mystery movie, and there was all these murders and this mystery person, right? The thing that really got me was the fact that through it all, Dick Tracy had never noticed that his assistant was the person that really was, she was right under his nose and he just couldn't pick her up, And for a child watching this, it had a profound effect on me. I think it was in my teens at the time or something like that. And it always reminded me, and it had a unique look and everything, but it always imprinted on me that sometimes we overlook the people who really sacrifice and care for us the most. And when they're gone, you really have a hole in you. It's for some reason, and the movie never explicitly kind of painted that picture. The actors never said that, but it's the way how they acted it out. That Dick Tracy always had, and of course I used to read Dick Tracy in the comics. Then the newspapers used to have a comic strip of it as well. So I used to read Dick Tracy all the time, and then to see something that looked sort of like the comic and everything, and then kind of became something that actualized, and just the feeling of it. It was very interesting, and it had an impact on me. It imprinted on me, and so when I went in and I saw that movie, I didn't come out the same person. You know what I'm saying? I have The Crow here, Kal-El. The Crow 1994 was again one of the most potent CBMs. Again, extremely graphic movie, rated R actually. It was a very graphic movie. Of course, it was the last of Brandon Lee's films. He died on set, but. What was profoundly impactful about that movie to me again was it wasn't about the justice. It wasn't even about righting the wrongs. It was one of the tenderest moments ever where he got the peace. He wanted to unite with his girlfriend, kind of like Gladiator. He would have to do all these atrocious things, but he really wanted to find peace. He wanted to go back to his girlfriend. And of course, ultimately in the end, the Crow they went on to do other things, but it was about a restless soul that wanted to be at peace, and so once again, that movie had a profound impact on me, and it was extremely violent. Of course, we love to see criminals, really wicked people get retribution, and the fact that they couldn't kill him, and he was laughing at them and stuff like that, was also very interesting, right? And of course, Brandon Lee, martial artist, all that, he was just, it was probably his crowning act, probably his greatest act ever in movies, and unfortunately, he died on the set. But you're right, The Crow, fantastic comic book movie, rated R though. And the thing about it is, seeing those things in the cinema have an impact on it. Literally, it touches you in a certain sort of way because one, you see vindication for wrongs, you feel it's justifiable. But this character is something from, like it's sort of like Spawn. He's kind of like devilish, it's kind of like, even though Brandon Lee's not a devilish person, he was a musician in the movie, you felt for him, and then he was going on his own journey. He had his own angst, and he was remembering so many things about his girlfriend, who he loved so much, and just the sadistic nature of these wicked people, how they raped her and all kinds of things. So he's going through all of this, getting back his memories, getting back what happened, all of those things, And so the movie was a development of this character, and at the same time, it's sort of like a sort of introspection by us on ourselves at the same time while this character is going through what he's going through, kind of like Joker. Joker was a case study, the accountant, the case study again, and this character is going through it. You're trying to solve the puzzle while you're going through with the character, what's really going on, you're trying to be a step ahead of the character, sort of like, and at the same time, this character is going through all these different stages and all these different things and all these different challenges. And you're sort of challenge yourself to go with the character, and the story carries you. That's what I love about great storytelling. Storytelling carries you somewhere. You go somewhere, right? And when that story is over, kind of like with fairy tales, the moral of the story, you get it. It's intrinsic in you. It's kind of stays with you. And that's what cinema does, ladies and gentlemen. Cinema I've always talked about transformative cinema. There is cinema that's popcorn flicks, and you just go in there to have a good time and just to see some people. I understand that. But all cinema cannot be that. You know what I mean? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which is funny and jokey, it was transformative as well. But you know why they're able to do that, though? I think back in the day, we always wanted to be a Ninja Turtle, or we always wanted to be Superman, or we always wanted a Dick Tracy. We were living vicariously through the lives of these print. And then when you see it now on the screen, you're willing to go with that character wherever it wants to go. And because they wrote it so very well, they're able to teach you the moral of the story. And so they were able to sort of, because they knew Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was for kids, right? But it was still graphically violent. I'm not gonna lie. The movies of the 80s and 90s, you couldn't really, they'd be rated R today. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. TMNT 1990 was mind-blowing as a child because it's violent. It was a violent movie, okay? And they used puppetry and prosthetics and stuff to make it, And man, I'm gonna say again, they lost the Shredder, which was interesting. Yeah. But again, that movie was transformative. I'll tell you why. It wasn't just about succeeding and pressing forward, but it was also about being different. And for me, I was a nerd, and I grew up in a time when nerds weren't. Today, nerds are accepted, right? People are more polymathic, and a nerd can play sports. And I was a nerd. Ladies and gentlemen. I was a nerd. I loved to read. I love books. I used to read like crazy. I used to wear glasses. I was a nerd, okay? And I loved information for information, not for information's sake, but just to discover things, okay? This is just what I was. And now that's a fad, okay? Everybody wants to know information and stuff. But back then, I was skinny. I was a nerd. I had a growth spurt. So when I saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I was like 13, 14, 15 years of age in the 80s. The late 90s, 80s, 90s. I was a teenager. And so, I used to, I wasn't reviled. People didn't mock me in school. They thought I was different, but I just never fit in with anybody. I never fit in with no group. There was no real clique of nerds in that school. When I went to another school, there was a clique of nerds, and I was like the dumbest nerd of the nerds. So I was the dumber nerd. So I didn't fit in with the nerds either, you know. So I didn't fit in with the nerds. I didn't fit in with the sports kids. I didn't fit in with the cool kids. And I was the principal's son at the time. So I didn't fit in with anybody. But I used to get along with everybody, but I didn't fit in anywhere. Like I didn't hang out with this group of people or that group of people. That's what I mean. It wasn't a lonely life or anything. It was just that I didn't hang out with people. I just kind of, I would speak to different people, but I wasn't with any group, any clique. That's what I'm saying. And so Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles appealed to me on that level, almost instantaneously. You know, because I was like, hey, these people don't fit in. Yeah, they got a little group and posse going on, but they kind of had to hide themselves from the world because, you know, the rat guy told them that, it can't be seen like that. So they had to be ninjas. That's why they were ninjas, actually, to survive. And so it was just really cool to see this. Why am I showing you this? I don't even know why I'm showing you the phone. It showed me coping mechanisms. And Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles taught me that you could cope in life by sort of, you're laughing at me now, by sort of masking what you are. So I was kind of like a ninja in my head. That is to say, people didn't know who I really was. I never got close to anybody. So I'd mask what I was. I'd like wear a mask of what I was so that I could creep up and, do what I wanted to do amongst people. So I learned how to smile. I learned how to be charming. I learned how to, the young ladies liked me, but I was smart enough to understand that I was just doing this as a front because I really wasn't on them. I wasn't a woman like that. I'm not gay or anything. I'm just saying. Now I am, but now back then I wasn't, right? I was all focused on, I was dialed in. Because what people don't know, Zack Snyder's dyslexic. My ex-girlfriend, she was also dyslexic. And she was in a PhD program like myself. And the cool thing about it is, I am slightly autistic. I know it don't appear that way. I met people with different degrees of autism. So when you watch The Accountant, which Ben Affleck did an excellent job of that movie, by the way. He's very much me. I was dialed in on studies and learn anything that doesn't have to do with human contact. I was totally into it. In fact, I never used to hug. I was not a hugger. It was a lady who was a nurse, who was a friend of my mom. She would always see me and say, "Ah!" and she'd come and hug me. That's how I learned to hug people. I didn't like being touched. It was weird, right? So I, as a person, I was a different kind of breed of person, but how I process information even to this day is different to how other people process information. I'm very much aware of that, right? I know my limitations as well in terms of comprehending certain social signals and social cues, which I've learned to sort of emulate rather than naturally do. And even Ben Affleck looks a little bit autistic. He reminds me of myself. When you see Ben Affleck's face like this, that's my face a lot of times. Like I have no expression on my face. It's just expressionless. But I've learned to, socially cue people into how I feel and reflect it outwards. Now, I love music. So music was that juncture that since I was little, when I was a little kid, I'm just break some things down about me. So when I was a little kid, right, I used to rock myself to sleep. Like, I'm not playing with y'all. I used to do this. If I was scared or something, or I didn't like the dark, I'd sit down, I would kind of sit up on the bed, and my pillow would be in front of me, and I'd rock back and forth and start to sing or hum. I go, I'm not playing. Another thing I used to do, which told me I was slightly autistic, I used to bang my head against a wall. I don't do it anymore, but it was very comforting. I just bang, 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 or I bounced the front of my head against the wall. I'm serious. I'm not playing. So So I knew something was different about me. And I was hung out by myself. There was a rocking chair there. My brothers would be fighting with each other, and I'd just be out like on a Friday afternoon. I'd just be in the rocking chair, rocking back and forth, and singing. I wouldn't stop. It's crazy. So I was different. I kind of knew that, and then now I know I was slightly autistic. So I didn't learn to read until I was like, I think 9 years old. So I just wouldn't read. You know what I'm saying? It's just one of those weird things. I would talk, but I wouldn't talk a lot. Right? So that was me. Anyway, I break this down to you because a lot of human beings come from different experiences. They come from different backgrounds. And I don't have a problem telling you my background. I have a problem telling you anything about my life because I believe that's how we help each other out. I know people can use it as weaponry and stuff. I get it. But it's sometimes good to be a transparent book because then somebody will know, hey, this guy, you know, he's working through some stuff that I'm working through, and maybe I can get through too. You know, so I like to tell people where I come from, the kind of perspective of how I see the world. And that's beautiful because that's what cinema does. Cinema connects with people. When you get that connection, that bond, sometimes people don't realize these little, you know, comic book movies, sometimes they connect with you, and it's about touching. It's about touching people. Patty Jenkins' Wonder Woman made me weep. I cried my eyes out. Yeah, I'm autistic, but that doesn't mean I don't have feelings. So I cried because that movie moved me, man. I didn't realize what women went through and how the struggles that they went through, and my mom went through, you know, my aunts, you know, I think about it all the time, you know, even my ex. These people go through some stuff, man. They go through some stuff. Women go through a lot. And that movie really helped me to see that because nobody ever showed me that. I never seen that in any movie, actually. You know, and that movie was able to bring that out. And again, these are things that are transformative. Cinema. You're not supposed to go into a cinema. I'm always going to say this because this is what imprints on you. The reason why you guys love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990 is because there's certain things that are imprinted on you, and you're not even aware that that's what it was. Go back and watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It might look stupid and clunky now, but try to identify what you were going through as a kid when you saw these movies and it had an impact on you. The first comic book movie I ever saw, I'd seen cartoons and TV and stuff. The first comic book movie I ever saw was Batman 1989. I always wanted to see the movie after I saw the trailer to it. I was like, what? Okay. Batman 19, I don't care what nobody say. Tim Burton killed it on that movie. He killed it on that movie. I went back and watched it recently. That movie stands the test of time. It stands up to the bar, bro. I'm saying right now. That movie's transformative. And I'm saying all of the Matrix, oh God, the Matrix made, you know, Greek mythology and all of these things and Greek arguments and Greek philosophy, they brought it to the modern day circuit. What is reality? Am I in a dream? Am I dreaming now? Am I part of a dream? It was just so cool. The Matrix you were not going to leave the Matrix the same as you went into the cinema. You just weren't. 1999. I cannot forget the year when the Matrix came out. You see what I'm saying? Cinema can be funny. Cinema can be dramatic. Cinema can be cutting edge sci-fi. But at the end of the day, cinema, in my opinion, only my opinion, if you go into that cinema and you leave the same person coming out that cinema, that ain't cinema. Cinema will touch you. Cinema will change you. People say they go into cinema for recluse or to hide from the world, to run away from your cares. Nah, I like to change that. While I do believe that cinema is a recluse, I do not believe that you run away from the world when you go into cinema. It's a controlled environment. I believe that. But when you go into cinema, you're going to meet that same world. But you're going to meet that same world in a way in which it's packaged that it will touch you. It may not feel good. You may leave that cinema feeling all kind of way, but it will touch you. And I think that's the principal thing that audiovisual cinema brings to the table, in my humble opinion. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I see it. So I believe you can be entertained. You can have popcorn flicks. You can have whatever. But I do believe if you go in there one way, there got to be a point to the story. So if there's a point to the story, whether the director was deliberately trying to make that point or not, you're going to leave the cinema different to how you came in. That's how I feel. That's how I feel about it. So, RoboCop, revolutionary. Oh man, RoboCop says so much about our society and just that construct and how they constructed it. Star Trek, oh my God. Let's not forget Star Trek, all right? Star Trek, oh my, they make books off of Star Trek. Just such a great, great piece of entertainment. Star Trek, you know what I'm saying? You had Buck Rogers, you had Stargate, you had, there's so many comic book movies that came before the MCU. All right? And I just gotta say it. The MCU is very successful, so they came upon something. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. We're going to talk about the MCU now. All right? Highlander. Oh, my God. Highlander. I mean, and then we had some really good movies after the MCU came into existence. We'll talk about those maybe a little later. But then came the MCU. Okay. Hold on. Let me get it. Hold on a second. I think the MCU is best described by Denis Villeneuve. Denis Villeneuve, who does right now, he's doing Dune Part 2. By the way, I enjoyed Dune. I saw Dune. It's a great movie. It's an epic movie. It's high stakes. It's a slow burn, but you gotta love Dune. If you don't like Dune, that's okay. But we're gonna go into why you should like Dune. Denis Villeneuve says this about Marvel movies. He says, there are too many Marvel movies that are nothing more than a cut and paste of other Marvel movies. Martin Scorsese said this about these movies. He said this. Hold on. Let me find it. Martin Scorsese says this. I don't see them, but I've tried to see them. I've tried to ride through them, see them. But that's not cinema. Honestly, the closest thing I can think of them as well made as they are, with actors doing the best they can under the circumstances, is theme parks. It isn't cinema of human beings trying to convey emotional, psychological experiences to each other or to another human being. He didn't see the interactions and the relationships as organically, emotionally and psychologically human. And I'll explain to you what he means. It's very simple. It feels like these movies are jokes on cue, emotional moments on cue, back to jokes on cue. All of these movies seem to have the same beats to them. It doesn't matter if it's the Russos, and the Russos are great directors. I have nothing against them. It doesn't matter if it's Waiko Waititi. It doesn't matter if it is, some other MCU director. They all have a formula to them. In fact, Denis Villeneuve said this about them. He said, there are too many Marvel movies that are nothing more than a cut and paste of others. And what he means is the beats in them are the same. That the story being told is the same kind of story. You just switch around the characters and stuff and you just use the same story. And that is one of the things that people have come to expect and they've been programmed to consume. Marvel movies are easy on the mind. They're easy. It's kind of like music that's easy to listen to. It's easy listening music. Marvel movies are easily digestible movies. They tell you, they show you, the music cues you on what is happening. So they're very, very obvious. There's not much subtlety to them. And their strong point is the action. They're action jokes, they're popcorn flicks. They're cinematic rides. They're theme park rides. Okay? They're put into cinema, but not necessarily shot like cinema. And so what I mean to say is that they feel more like TV movies, like episodes, than they do feel to me like cinema. And that's because they use the TV model where the producers have the final say on the movies and how they want the movies to look, and not the directors. So you don't get that unique directorial experience and therefore diversity in them. Even Endgame and Infinity War, to me, were just the same assembly line thing. It seems like they took Iron Man as a template for these movies and they progressed forward with that. That's the feeling. I think the Russos had the most leeway with Winter Soldier. I think Winter Soldier was their most leeway they had. Civil War was a construct. I think all the other MCU movies to this day are constructs. They have a director and title, but ultimately Kevin Feige and the other executives of the Marvel Studios actually have the final say. And again, I've done this already in another. Video, another stream, where I actually broke down to you. I'm just going to use a small excerpt from it and said this. The Russo said that he had seen some issues when a cut of any particular project is delivered to Marvel Studios and it is not what they are expecting or what they think is working. The results are Marvel stepping in and taking over some control from its directors, working with them in a much heavier way to develop fixes before going into weeks and weeks of reshoots. Right. But having said all of that, the movies are good in the sense of this. They speak about good things. They have a moral to the story. They tie the story together very nicely, like Disney does with almost all its films. There are one or two films where they don't, and that's cool. And usually those films don't do well because they have programmed people to go with this flow, this story flow. So the story flow is, it's easy watching. It's got all the elements of comedy, but yet pathos. They're done on cue. People are programmed to believe this is real. And as a result of that, you leave the cinema satisfied, even though you're not transformed. And to me, those are safe ways to make movies, first of all. They're commercial ways to make movies. And I can see studios being very appealing to them. In fact, Warner Brothers right now is pursuing that to see if that will work for DC. They're doing exactly the same thing Marvel has been doing. But the thing about it is the audience is not really going anywhere. The audience is getting events. The audience is getting these tremendous rides. But it is not transformative. It's not transformative. The story's not saying anything. This is what Martin Scorsese had to say. Cinema could be anything. It didn't just have to be serious. Some like it not. That was cinema, for instance. But I do think that the manufactured content isn't really cinema. What do these films do? What do they give you? Aside from consuming something and then eliminating it from your mind, what is it giving to you? You gotta say something with a movie. Otherwise, what's the point of it? You've got to say something. I always felt like that, quite frankly. I always felt that movies, especially now as a Christian, I always felt that movies need to say something. I always felt like music needed to say something. And different music, while it harmonizes with people, they identify it, and also it's saying something to them that allows them to see their lives in the music. So it's relatable because it's covering some aspect of life that probably had not been articulated before. I think movies are the same way. I'm not saying that the MCU only has movies like that don't necessarily, they appeal to the audience, they commercially appeal to the audience, they connect with the audience to a certain degree because I'm sure they do their homework and their research and they know what appeals to people, but not in an intimate way, not in a way that is transformative, that can help a person understand themselves better and understand life better. And I believe it's good. It's good that they're there. I think it's revolutionary in the sense that it's something new, something different. But of itself, so the MCU as a franchise is new and different, but of the individual movies, they're not much different to each other. You put different players, but they're not much different to each other, showing the limited approach and perspective of comic book movies. They change the look, but they don't really dive deeply into the psychological, into the emotional elements of these characters, I believe. And so it doesn't connect with me. I do agree Black Panther is one of those movies that is exceptional in the pantheon of MCU movies. But I can't really say much for the sequel because I wasn't interested in the sequel. But as to say that these movies, and so as a result of that, the way how these movies beats are, the way how the characters are, the fact that the characters do evolve to some degree, but not much. Like Captain America is the same movie to movie to movie to movie to movie. Different things happen to him, but he's the same person basically from since we saw him from the beginning. He never evolved. He never was challenged. He never grew. And I think that's the difference between the older comic book movies and these now. So what I'm going to show you, what I'm about to show you now, so there are pluses to the MCU. Like I said before, the pluses are bring something new to the table. Companies could try and use this model and make a lot of money. Commercially, they were very successful. Two, again, not only did they bring something new to the table, but they were able to sort of define a niche for franchise movies. So they kind of borrowed the franchise model, like the Fast and Furious model. That's a franchise movie, and it works out. And so the MCU is like a franchise movie. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of like that. The appeal to it was, hey man, we can assemble characters together and we can make them work. So that's what the MCU did. So there's a lot of positive things. A lot of people are fans of the MCU. So I'm not here to trash people or trash the MCU. It has its positives. There's nothing wrong with that. I know that Kevin Feige would like to evolve the MCU further and evolve the characters now and start telling some more unique stories. But to do that, you have to be less involved in the direction the directors want to go. While you have to interconnect the stories, you have to take risks, more risks than you've been taking at present. Why did I say it dumbs down the audience? The audience comes to expect certain things of comic book characters. And they don't give the directors the leeway to tell a story that could touch them. And some of them are immune to touch. And I'm going to give you an example of one right now. So I'm going to go up on Twitter. All right, so I'll give you an example of one, and I'll show you how this person is going to go down the road of what this character should or should not have done. Has to do with Superman, has to do with Man of Steel. Somebody said the worst part of the entire fight between General Zod and Superman is why didn't Superman stop the oil truck from LexCorp from slamming into a parking lot behind it and exploding? He even looks back to see if it leveled the parking lot. Shaking my head. Zach had it wrong on so many levels. Okay? That's what this person says here. So they're addressing the destruction that happened in Metropolis as a result of Superman trying to stop General Zod and his army that came to invade the Earth, terraform it, destroy it, in other words, kill all the humans on it, and start Krypton. This person isolates one scene where Superman, General Zod, he kicks a oil truck, it seems, from LexCorp at Superman. And it's splitting down the center, and Superman jumps over the split area. The truck slams into the bottom of a parking lot and blows up, caving in the parking lot. Superman looks back, and General Zod takes that opportunity to punch him really badly. Now, I am not here to talk about that guy. I am here to talk about a young lady named Connie 4MVS, Villain Arc. She puts a parody on a Villain Arc. She says this: God forbid Superman just stop the truck that's moving slow as fuck. Excuse my French. It rhymes. Truck and fuck. She says this as if, first of all, the truck is moving slowly. General Zod kicked the truck at Superman, which is coming at probably 60 miles an hour. And she's saying that slowly because she cannot depth perceive. So it looks like the truck's taking about a second and a half to reach Superman. And so she's like, it's moving slow. Remember, for those of you who have not seen Man of Steel, the Kryptonians on Earth move at super speed, so they can move very, very fast. And in addition to that, they are they're super strong. And they can leap super high. You know, Superman can fly. So anyway, Superman, he jumps over the center of the truck, and the truck smashes into the parking lot, blowing up the parking lot, and cars come falling down. Now, she's saying that Superman could stop the truck. Now, I'm going to show you how Marvel has sort of made people say, well, this is what this character ought to have done, and this is what this character ought to have done. Because the problem with this is people saying this is because first of all, they've never seen characters being challenged like that in a while. We've seen it with, you know, Highlander. We've seen it with Blade. We've seen it with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, where the characters are challenged and they're dealing with an overwhelming challenge that they fail sometimes to accomplish. But because Marvel movies do not necessarily address that, the villains, we say, in them are weak because the characters seem to overcome them so easily. And because Marvel gives you easy watching, you're not thinking a whole lot, you're not processing a whole lot, you're not putting yourself in the situation a whole lot. You're looking at the characters on the screen, them, they, them. This is what the character is doing. You're not seeing yourself in the character. See, back in the day, when they made movies, you would see yourself in the character and you go along with the character. In this movie, which is Man of Steel, if you relate to Superman, you'll start to see yourself in Superman, right? These people today with Marvel's an entertainment where they talk about Iron Man, but Iron Man's not relatable. Meaning, what I mean by this is people are not seeing themselves in Iron Man anymore. Iron Man's a special sort of hyper, and they're just going on Iron Man's journey and where Iron Man goes. But Iron Man's not relatable at all, right? Because they never tried to make Iron Man relatable to anybody. You see what I'm saying? He's a caricature. Whereas when Zack Snyder does Bruce Wayne, when he personalizes Bruce Wayne, you start to feel what Bruce Wayne is going through, the pain that he suffered. You can put yourself in the situation if you've lost a parent or if you lost somebody very close to you. You can start to feel what he's saying. You can empathize with him. And as he's making his arguments, you can empathize with him. It's a difference between putting a character out there, making him so interesting that people are interested in the character, but not necessarily relating to the character. They're intrigued to see what the character will do next, versus you're putting yourself in the shoes of that character. So when we say relatability, we're not talking about, you can want to be Iron Man, for example. He's so intriguing you want to be him, but does that mean you're relatable to him? Do you relate to him? Do you relate to what he's going through? Do you relate to the trouble? And Iron Man is actually one of the more colorful characters in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because he does have shortcomings. And that's something people can relate to, that they have shortcomings. And that they need to correct their mistakes. So that in that respect, people can relate to him there. But to say any other way, they don't really relate to him because there's no real, he doesn't go into any psychological journey. He doesn't have anything that haunts him. He doesn't really have anything that bothers him, you know. So you don't see that. You see his deficiencies. He's a fuck up, as they say, but you don't see him being haunted by anything. He doesn't have any past, even though his parents died. Bucky actually killed his parents. They don't really go into it. They don't really elaborate on it. They don't really dig into it. You know, and that's the thing about Marvel. Marvel wants to give you easy watching. They don't want to do anything too much to disturb you. They don't want to do anything. They want to play it safe. And because they want to play it safe, people begin to think that life is the portrayal of what these characters are, and that only CBMs can only be this way. So you hear people say things like, they rushed a Superman. BVS came after Man of Steel. They rushed it. They should have had more movies behind that. But we know League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, X-Men. The very first film was a team-up, right? We had monsters. We had so many different cinematic universes and franchises from the Fast and the Furious and onwards, where you didn't need to have individual stories of people to team up. Right? In fact, James Gunn is saying that Superman Legacy is supposed to have all these you're existing in a world of superheroes already. So the team ups can happen. So it's not imperative that you have 10 movies to have a team up. That's something that Marvel did. That's what the MCU did. And you bought into the MCU and you think that's the only way. And the industry did that too. So Marvel dumbed down people. I'm not going to give you this example of this young lady here. So Connie says, God forbid, Superman just stop the truck that's moving slow as fuck. So Realist says to her, can you explain how he would have stopped that slow moving truck? He's going with her. He's like, all right, whatever. And she shows Superman Returns, where Superman is spending minutes in the sky trying to stop a plane that is falling. And she shows the ending scene here. I don't know if you can see this, where he's stopping the plane right there, right? Now, Superman was spending minutes in the sky trying to slow down this plane and stop it, right? So I guess Superman had minutes to stop the truck. Now, let's just, it's the reasoning that really gets me. So Realist says, for starters, the distance between the plane and the ground gave Supes a much bigger head start, and it still drove him back. In Man of Steel, Superman tried the same when a train was being thrown at him by the big Kryptonian guy, Namek, and it still slammed him through a building. What's to say that this truck would have not done the same? So she goes back to say, I didn't mean it literally one-on-one. Holy shit, she said. I meant he attempted to slow it down, but before he even got to Zod would rush him. Essentially what happens in the movie. But he at least tried something. So he should have tried to stop the truck from, when it slams into him, from hitting the building or something. I don't know what she was trying to say. Okay. So the point I was trying to make in the clip that you refused to watch shows that Supes already knows firsthand what would happen if he stood in the way of a heavy moving vehicle like that. And he learned from his mistake earlier in the same movie with the train. He understands he'll get pushed back and he can't do anything about it. She said, oh, I did watch the clip, by the way, but only after you asked if I had. And it was exactly what I thought it was based on the title and thumbnail. It's actually less than what I thought. So she didn't answer him. She just said, I watched it and it was less than what I thought, which is stupid because what he's saying is in the movie, Superman already tried to stop a train that was hurled at him. And he still caused a lot of damage. He went with the train. So why would he try to stop this truck and go with the truck? Right? He said, okay, but do you get my point as to why Superman chose to jump instead of trying to stop it with his own body? I could see why he might think of stopping it would be a bad idea, but he seems more surprised that it exploded than anything. So I go ahead and I throw my piece in. I said, this is the first day Superman is Superman, first of all. You expect him to do everything perfectly? Do you guys actually think when you watch these movies that Superman on his first day as Superman, having never fought a day in his life, would be able to handle every situation perfectly? She told me that I'm actually crazy, that I took what she said to mean that Superman should be perfect. She said, I never said that. I never said anything like that. And you really don't want me to tell you my top 10 movies because all of those, okay. I am just speaking about Man of Steel and have minor issues with it. That's a minor issue, apparently. So minor that she's talking about, right? I said, that's what you're doing. You're nitpicking someone doing the most important thing, saving billions of lives, telling people that that person should or should not be doing, comparing them to someone else who's already established. She's comparing Superman to maybe Superman 1978, who's already an established Superman, he's learned through his experiences what to do and what not to do. We do that all the time. People are not allowed to make mistakes and learn. You're harping on something that you yourself would not be able to handle. in the heat of a moment. You try to tell people that they ought to be this and that when you fall miserably short of the mark yourself. She then went on to say, that's nuts, because out of all the other stupid shit he does in the movie where it fails, I don't care because it's believable. I don't even know what she meant by that. Here, though, it's so easy to just try, yet he doesn't seem to care. That's my issue. So I said this. I said to her, how do you mean he doesn't seem to care? He's taking on General Zod, the guy who is trying to wipe out every single human. So he should be distracted by a truck, okay? Instead of focusing on a General Zod he has been born and bred and trained to kill. His primary focus should be on General Zod, not on the truck. So he's focused in on what matters the most. To which she says this, and many other people were responding to her because it's ridiculous that she's not thinking. She's not trying to think, she's trying to argue. And this is a person, by the way, who praised Civil War, who praised Winter Soldier. Okay? And it's these kinds of simple-minded thinking and people who try to tell us what a character should do, even though what they're telling us the character should do is unrealistic and doesn't make sense because you're in the heat of battle and so on. And if you never had been confronted with, anybody who knows fighting, if you've never been confronted with a certain situation, okay, then you don't know what you're going to do in the moment. But if you have been confronted, this is how people learn. And when you're confronted with the situation, then you can know how best to approach it. So we are seeing Zack Snyder developing the Superman, helping him to mature and grow as a Superman, having to deal with his first world-changing issue, and he performed relatively well, given the circumstance that was put upon him. It was a tremendous burden put upon him. People who are far better than him, far better fighters than him, he was taking on. And I went on to elaborate that. Now, my point anyway is this. Because movies are such that not everything is spelt out, there's nuance. You have to be able to pick up what makes a movie a movie. And of course, if a movie speaks to you, you're able to relate to other people what the movie was saying. It's very easy to do because when you can tell when somebody doesn't have a connection to a movie. For some reason, they're phased out and they're not connected to the movie. And you have to explain that movie to them. And a lot of people, because they're not connected to the movie, because again, if you've been feeding on, let's say you're feeding on a lot of junk food, right? Candy and sweets and all this kind of stuff, right? And I give you a nice plate of soul food. And I say, here you go. And you say, I don't want that. Give me some cotton candy and stuff like that, right? That's what kids would do, right? It's because your taste buds are not adapted to that food. Similarly, her taste buds was not adapted to this kind of movie. Even though before the MCU, there was a spectrum of movies like this. Maybe this person was born in the time of the MCU or whatever. Maybe that's what they feed on, whatever. But that critical thinking is not there. You know, you could tell this is a person who is on the go. You know, but they trying to make they trying to argue with people who clearly have critical thinking, and they don't have it. And so every time she makes a complaint or she keeps talking about her feelings, which is what basically she talks about, you get the feeling that this person is not processing a single thing I just said. And they're headlong in their way, you know? And they get 5, 6, 7, I think it was about 10, 20 people were commenting on this person's thing about how Man of Steel makes sense. And this person it went through one ear, went out, and they go back harping on the same thing. as if this movie, and they know it's real, they know it's impactful because they are affected by it. See, that's the thing about cinema. It will affect you. So you will speak on it because you feel offended because it actually touched you. Again, cinema is not necessarily going to make you feel good about yourself. Cinema is there to change you, to help the transformative process. And sometimes you see things about yourself that you don't like. So when she started to grumble and complain and started to behave like how she behaved, this is what I mean by Marvel movies affect people negatively. Because people have this concept about comic book movies, and it has to be this way. Before Marvel came into existence, comic book movies were there. They commented on all kinds of different things. They were done exponentially well. Again, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, it was a struggle with this individual contemplating his responsibilities, what he could say, what he couldn't say, and he was growing as a character in that movie. Similarly with Superman. Superman was going through a challenge. He's growing as a character and seeing how he develops into the person that. And this is the thing that obviously is missing in cinema today and in franchise movies today. And this is why Martin Scorsese says the humanity of the thing and what's the word I'm looking for? And the psychological connection and the relationships, the organic relationships, are now called boring. I heard somebody say Oppenheimer was a boring movie. That's reality. Reality is, to you, boring because you've been watching the MCU and you've been entertained by artificial constructs, not real people dealing with real situations. You will say they're real people because, they don't have superpowers and stuff, which is a very, very, very narrow way of thinking and a very, very juvenile way of thinking. Because you look at it, it's Hollywood. The interactions are not real. They're artificial interactions. Why do I say that? Because there's always a joke thrown in the middle of it. And you can't have a real conversation if you're trying to make people laugh in the middle. Because that's the mask that I was telling you about. You put on a mask and you can't be. When you want to have a sincere conversation, you got to take off those masks. You dig? So that's what I mean by the MCU has dumbed down cinema. And it certainly has dumbed down the cinema-going fan who expects these quick, short, quick-witted sort of movies. And they must make me laugh, because that's how I de-stress, when that's not how you de-stress. You're lying to yourself. The way to de-stress is to actually go through the situation and accomplish and get through it, not escape from the situation. See, because people say that movies are escapism, people think that means run from the world or run from this, and you're not running from nothing. It's just like a recluse or you're going on a retreat. I hate that word retreat though, where you're going to refresh yourself. You may be taking your mind off of certain things, but at the same time, you're dealing with the same issue and solving the issue right there in that theater. But it gives you a non-confrontational, usually, environment, a safe environment where you can process. And that's what people don't get. And that's what people don't understand about cinema. So we go on to the other thing. So the other thing we want to talk about, and there's a couple other things I want to talk about, so let me see if I can get to them. The other thing I want to talk about is the DCU trying to copy this and what that means. Martin Scorsese was saying a lot of things, and one of the things he said that really was true was there's a lot of action movies now, a lot of action, people kicking up, fighting, and all that kind of thing. And that's cool, but he said just the everyday experiences of people and the difficulties and how mistakes we've made and things we've covered up. There's a lot of story to tell right there. Dramatical stories, drama. Even if it's humor and comedy, you're using drama though. And he emphasized that, a lot of these big budget studios don't want to put money into these dramas and stuff. Now, thankfully for him, his Killers of the Flower Moon, which comes out very soon in October, it's going to be in IMAX. I'm going to definitely try and find it. If it's here in IMAX, great. But I definitely want to see it. I did not go this weekend to see, what time is it? Oh, it's 10 o'clock already. Wow. Day's going like a bullet. I didn't go into the cinema to see The Creator yet, but I'm definitely going to go into the cinema and see that. Um, and those are movies, again, that are introspective. They are also informative. You're not going to go into the cinema one way and come out one way. It's not about the movie being good. It's about the movie being transformative. And for me, when, these topics are addressed, whether it's past, of the past, or even of the future, or even of the present, I think these are great movies and great cinema. I think that's what great cinema is all about. So WDBD is going down a pathway that I think is only going to make the audience dumber. The good side to this is I don't think the DC fans are going to go for that. And as much as there are strategies out there on Twitter, etc., where people are trying to dumb down DC, make it into a laugh fest, I don't think I think it's insults on intelligence. I think we really are repulsed by it, and the fact that they refuse to do DC movies that are serious, there's going to be a tremendous pushback. And if Warner Brothers doesn't want to have to sell their properties, which looks like eventually they'll have to do that, they'll need to change course. And that leads us to restoring the Snyderverse. So far, not a single DC film of the new DC and also of the Jeff Johns influenced DCEU or DCU, whatever Jeff Johns wanted to call it, and whatever James Gunn is going to be doing, is going to be the same thing. We've seen a lot of comedy with these characters now. Very little straight playing of these characters. It's just a lot of comedy, whether it's in animation or if it's in live action. It's a lot of comedy, and it's not working. It's not working. And to get any of those things to really work, of course, him putting out what's the hell of the thing? I can't even remember. Creature Commandos, I think, is what James Gunn is talking about putting out into cinemas. Not cinemas, on Max. Obviously, putting that out on Max really ain't gonna help nothing because it's not a film, so we can't see what the majority of the money you make is still off of movies and still off of cinema. And so I really couldn't care less what he puts on, whether it goes on Max or not. There's no way to really truly track it. So they can put up any numbers they want. But if he gets to do his Superman Legacy movie, that movie's gonna flop so hard it's not gonna be funny. It's gonna flop so hard because people are going to push back on the fact that he has destroyed DC. As far as we're concerned, he hasn't helped DC at all. He hasn't revived DC. Nothing. He's done nothing to revive DC, to help DC so far. So people, and the fact that they fired Henry Cavill and Ben Affleck's out, it adds fuel to the fire. And I don't think Gal Gadot should take any job with those guys. I'm gonna be honest with you. She should just distance herself from them. Something else I want to show you guys. Okay, so here's another piece of information. This is preliminary information, but nonetheless, I'm going to give you some information here, some resounding information here. So I did 2 polls. First one was this: you tell me which you always wanted to see from your childhood as a DC fan in live action. I gave 3 examples: Darkseid versus the Justice League, Superman Legacy, or Creature Commandos. Believe it or not, I have 601 votes right now. Believe it or not, 17% of the people said Superman Legacy. They don't even know what that movie is gonna be. But they said since they're a child and they wanted to see Superman Legacy. That's so funny. Creature Commandos. 1% said Creature Commandos. You know they're trolling. Oh, they're not DC fans. But 82% said Darkseid versus the Justice League, which is common sense. Okay? The peak of DC is when the Justice League faces Darkseid, the Justice League faces Brainiac, the Justice League takes on maybe the Black Lantern Corps, something like that, some epic intergalactic something. That's the height of DC. There's no doubt about that. Okay, I did another poll. Which one of the following you most would want to see this year? So this is for Warner Brothers. So I tagged in Warner Brothers Pictures. I said Wonka, which is coming out December 25th, Christmas Day. Color Purple, which is coming out, I believe, in October. Aquaman 2, which is coming out in December. I believe it's December the, 22nd, I believe. Zack Snyder's Justice League, which is not coming out, but we're campaigning for it to come out in November, particularly November the 17th. And 78% of the people said Zack Snyder's Justice League. 13% said Aquaman 2, 5% said Wonka, and 3% said The Color Purple, which is very, very interesting because this movie's not even earmarked to come out this year, and 78% of the people want it. Point being this, and this is a point to Warner Brothers, and regardless of whether you feel the polls are skewed or not, that's a lot of people, okay? That's at least 1,000 and something people that want that, okay, in this poll. And I've been trying to get as many different people as I could. Yes, I got Snyder fans. I went to them first, but I'm also trying to get as many different kinds of people as I can. All right? The point is, anyway, that the demand is not for what currently DC offers. I've already said this already, right? And the point I'm making is the direction that DC is going in is not one that is going to help anybody in any way, one. Two, it's not something that the DC fans want. And they've told you that time and time again. You have some DC fans, and most of them are gunts, who would like to see what James Gunn is doing because they're James Gunn fans. They're not even DC fans. Some of them came across from the MCU. My point being this, a lot of them burner accounts anyway. My point being this, these people have proven that they can't make movies. They can't make movies successful. Period. So why, Warner Brothers Pictures, are you trying to do something that does not work for DC? You are looking at Marvel, you're watching at the MCU and what they did with their fan base. They were able to do it because they convinced their fan base that that could work. DC is not in that position where you're copying something that the fans certainly have told you they don't want. Why are you persisting with something the fans don't want? And they showed you with their wallets. They don't want that stuff. And the DC fans have a history. Look at the history again. I'm going to go through it again. The history of movies from DC, or even if they're Marvel movies, is always a movie that the DC fans like because of the inherent depth and value of the movie. All right? Depth and value of the movie. Right? So your family, and you say you're going to appeal to a certain age range. You can't get that age range in cinema if their parents don't give them the money. Okay? So the reality of the situation is this. We press on with Restore the Snyderverse. Okay, first of all. Second of all, we're not here to bow down to Warner Brothers Pictures or anything. I talked to Abdi and DeLuca. I sent messages to them. And I will continue to do so. And I hope they can persuade Mr. Zaslav to change his mind, because he's going down the wrong pathway and it's going to really bust in his face. Ugly. But I would suggest to them also very strongly that they release the Snyder Cut this year and they have the Snyderverse restored. And that No one can tamper with the Snyderverse that Zack Snyder is doing and other directors. They should report directly to Abdi and DeLuca. There are certain films which are right now sort of pretty much Abdi and DeLuca overseeing those films, not the DCEU guy, James Gunn and Jeff Johns and them kind of guys, right? Jeff Johns and James Gunn, Joss Whedon, all those guys, they can do whatever they want with the DC. I'm saying, Abdi and DeLuca, you guys take charge of Zack Snyder stuff. It's still DC, just like with Matt Reeves and what's the guy's name? And Matt Reeves and Todd Phillips, but leave it outside the ambit of James Gunn. James Gunn just rubber stamps it. That's it. Okay? Abdi and DeLuca really handling those things. So you have Zack Snyder under Abdi and DeLuca. He finishes off his movies. You have other directors with Zack Snyder on there, and let them finish off their movies. And if you experimental thing with James Gunn is going on, let it go. But you have a backup just in case something goes wrong. That is how they need to operate, in my opinion. Quite frankly, James Gunn, what he's doing is not going to be cinema, even though he does use cinema elements, but quite clearly they're trying to manufacture something like how Marvel's doing, even though Marvel's having difficulty now. And I would say that, to create movies and to get it, you need a singular vision. You need a director's vision. You don't mess with the director's vision, more than likely it comes out good. There's some directors which they'll just fall on their own sword and that'll be it. But Patty Jenkins made a big mistake by going with Jeff Johns and moving away from Zack Snyder. She should have stayed with Zack Snyder. And, she made a great movie. It wasn't the same thing as what Zack Snyder intended to do. And she could have made other great movies. I hope to see Patty Jenkins again. I hope that we get, some of the directors who've been, like David Ayer, that his movie would be worked out properly, and so forth. But it's very important to understand that a lot of people, I know there's a lot of burner accounts on Twitter as well, but a lot of people have been, I think, spoon-fed too much by the MCU, and I think they've been dumbed down so that they can't reason through characters that have been placed under certain challenges, which are tremendous challenges. I love that at a certain point in time, I actually have a lot more respect for Christopher Reeves and his rendition of Superman 1978, okay? It's a fantastic movie. But there's no more Christopher Reeves. Why are you trying to ride Christopher Reeves' dead corpse to the grave? You know what I mean? So please stop doing that, Warner Brothers. Please stop bringing out these Christopher Reeves versions of Superman. Christopher Reeves is great for his time. For his time, you keep the character reinvented. Zack Snyder is doing a great thing. You got Henry Cavill. You should really get him back. Get those two guys back so they can do a solo movie with Superman. Another solo movie with Superman. Get the Ben Affleck movie going. David Ayer cut in the cinemas. And get the ball rolling. You know what I'm saying? That's what I got for you guys. I am Christ, I am disciple. I hope you guys had a good day. And I do think that cinema is still alive and well. Like with Jesus resurrected out of the tomb. It looks like a tomb, but it's empty. And I think cinema will stay. But for the moment, we have to kind of put up with the nonsense that's going on. But I think it's going to change and soon. That's what I got for you guys. I am Christ, I am disciple. I'll catch you guys later. Have a good one. Peace. Shit, I don't know if I can go down.